This enormous fish comes up in the water and it just went across the surface. In the late 1990s, Wraysbury 1 was 120 acres of carp fishing paradise. Those carp at that point were without doubt the absolute icing on the UK's carp scene. Then another one topped out and it came out right over where I was fishing. Boom, I thought, I'll do 2 nights, 2 Wraysbury carp. Back and forth it goes, back and forth, for another weed bed, another weed bed. You're fishing for 40-something carp in 120 of the most amazing acres of carp ponds you could ever imagine to fish, and you just lost them. And then suddenly, beep! And I just collapsed on the back of the boat and went, here's Mary. And went, of course it's Mary. Oh, I've just caught the biggest carp in the country. Nothing is going to beat that. I love these shots of fish on the top. Big crucian, that was my personal best crucian. And a nice old mirror. And down the bottom of the page, cluster. Now there's a story. Unfortunately, there's a big gap there in my own slide collection because that was the year that I lost my camera, amongst other things, but more of that in a moment. Those moments when you look in that landing net and you know that you've caught Mary, I think as an angler, as a carp angler, that read about Wraysbury as a youngster who, passionately wanted to go and fish there, to catch what was at that day the very biggest carp in the country will live with me forever. And I've caught some lovely fish since then too, significant ones as well. But that carp, that moment was just absolutely incredible. During the fight, you're playing that fish and you think, it was running through my head, wow, this one's really, really up for it. This one's rucking very hard. And you're playing it and you think, okay, the take was beyond savage. The initial run was enormous. And as it's coming up in the water, you get that first little glimpse, splash of water, and you think, that's a huge fish. And then it starts to run through your head. Could it be Jacko's common? Well, it's definitely not a common. Is it the pug? No, it's the wrong shape. Is it Malins, which was the fish I really went to Wraysbury to catch? You think, no, that's definitely not the right shape for that one. It's not Mary's mate. It's got less scales on it. And then that, it starts to come in your mind. You think, M-A, Y. Oh my God, I'm playing Mary. So that moment when Jim netted it and I crashed back in the back of the boat, full of emotion and excitement and adrenaline. And I said to Jim, is it Mary? And he turned around and said, of course it's chuffing Mary. That as an angler, that is the absolute pinnacle of what we go fishing for. The excitement, those moments are just, yeah. And to look at that picture of Mary now, me wearing the most ridiculous bright pink t-shirt and green shorts, both of which I'd rescued from a lost and found box at Sparshot College. I didn't buy either of them, which probably basically explains how tight-fisted I can be at times. But yeah, that was an amazing moment in my fishing. And to have caught that fish, we went out and we had breakfast in the local cafe. And I'll be honest to say I did drink a couple of beers, made a few very emotional phone calls to friends, just about blab out the word Mary. Lots of well dones, and then I think my mobile phone probably went dead. One of the last conversations I had was with my girlfriend at that point, and she said, "Oh, you're going to come home now?" And I said, "No way, no way. There are other big carp to catch in here." And as I mentioned, that Malins was the fish I'd really keen to catch when I got to Wraysbury, from that picture in Dave Lane's book on 257, the colour plate. And I thought that's the fish I most wanted to catch. So I was, catching Mary was a high point, obviously, but I wasn't finished then. So I set off.
Right, sorry to interrupt, but whilst I have your attention, I just want to talk about a couple of things. Firstly, would you please subscribe to our YouTube channel? We would massively appreciate it, and you will stay very much up to date with everything YouTube orientated that we do. Secondly, and as well as asking you for a little favour, we have a little something that might be of interest to you. If you click the link in description or scan the QR code on screen, you will be entitled to 50% off your first 3 months as a Cypography member. And as a Cypography member, you will get access to over 1,000 videos and several other member perks.
The next couple of trips were less fruitful. I did find fish, I had opportunities and chances, but didn't manage to get a bite. My next chance came towards the end of the summer, and yeah, it was early September. And as a Sparsholt College lecturer, our holiday sort of came, we had a nice long summer holidays back then, I think 10 weeks in all, which seems amazing nowadays because the world of teaching's changed a lot. But we had 10 weeks, and in my last few days before the students came back, I managed to get another trip, and the wind was blowing up towards the North Lake. And there was an area in the North Lake called the Stile, and that area of the lake, the wind was sort of pushing into that area. And I parted the reeds and just put a couple of rods through them and put out probably 14 or 21 grains of my Pescaviva sweet corn, flicked them out, and during the night I had a bite, and it was a stocky common. It wasn't the biggest fish, it was only a 17 pounder, but it was another fish. And I have to keep referring to my notes here just to remind me of the weights of the fish, but it's 17 pounds. And it had a really weird mouth. Its mouth couldn't open and close. I put that down to probably either that it had been damaged when it was a very small fish, someone had winched it through a reed bed or weed bed rather, and it damaged its mouth, or possibly as a small carp it had been deformed. But anyway, this carp had a really strange shaped mouth, so it was permanently open, and it could only literally fit in 2 grains of sweet corn, which was lucky because that's all that I was using on my hair at that point. And that was the end of 1999 on Wraysbury 1 for me. The students came back, I was back into a busy teaching timetable, and it didn't really allow me much time to get to Wraysbury and have any serious opportunity to have a crack at any of the fish. I kept in touch obviously with the guys fishing the lake, but through the autumn and through the beginning of the year 2000, I concentrated my efforts on another lake which was closer to where I was working at Sparsholt College, and it was a smaller lake, and I felt I could really get on top of it, and I did through that winter, and I did catch a fair few fish, including a 40 pounder on the 7th of January 2000, which was a real high point. And the afternoon after I'd caught that fish, I went into the classroom and I was literally 10 feet tall and buzzing, as you can imagine. And I was there teaching this group. I think there were 32 students. I remember a couple of their names. Dan Gale was in the group. Nick Davies was in that group, and they were sitting there, and they must have thought, oh my God, what has Simon taken during his lunch break? I was literally hopping off the walls, having just caught a 40 pounder in the middle of January. So that was that. And the beginning of the year 2000. But the year 2000 was a really tricky one. I obviously very excited to get back to Wraysbury. But about a week before the start of the fishing season, I split up with my girlfriend, same girl that asked me if I was going to come back, having caught Mary. And that had a profound effect on me. We had a flat together in Winchester, so that obviously knocks the stuffing out of you a little bit. And to add insult to injury, the season started full of optimism. Ben and I were there. We had Ben Gratwick and I, who sort of fished loosely as a pair. And we started looking around the lake to try and pick our areas to fish. Having the 2 cars, I had a Renault 5 Prima, and Ben had a little Golf, I think, if our memory serves me right. And we left all the gear in Ben's Golf on the Sailing Club Peninsula, and we took my car around the other side of the lake to see Cockle, Mark Tolland, who had been fishing Wraysbury a couple of years longer than us and had caught a few fish, including Mary. And he was a great friend. We clicked with him really well, and he made us feel very welcome, and it was a nice atmosphere with him. So we went round to see Cockle. We had a couple of cups of tea with Cockle, and then we said, right, well, let's go back to Ben's car. And I can never forget driving up the drive, going onto the Sailing Club point and seeing the back of Ben's car smashed, and then just hanging over the what had been the back sheet of glass on the car, the rear windscreen, was a towel hanging out of it, and on the gravel just beside Ben's car was his little tiny radio, fishing radio, in bits. And there's the enormity of all of your kit. Everything you owned had been stolen. Every single thing, your bed chair, your rods, the lead that you'd caught Mary on, everything had gone. And literally your entire carp fishing world had been stolen. And there was that frantic sort of disbelief as you looked at the back of Ben's car. You thought, it can't be. And there was a guy fishing literally 100 yards away, and he hadn't heard a thing. It was the Sailing Club's open day, and there'd been people going up and down, and no one had seen anything. Yeah, all of our fishing kit, 2 full sets of carp gear, not quite like possibly the carp gear we might have nowadays, barrows and bits and pieces. It was a bit simpler back then, but everything we'd owned to go carp fishing had gone. And so I drove back to Sparshot College that day, really, really down. And it was a difficult time. And I've got to be honest, then the spark kind of went out for a bit. My mum was very poorly. I had no fishing kit. I split up with my girlfriend, I lost my flat. I thought I just didn't want to go fishing. It was easier just to go out with my mates and drink beer, chase girls, and just let your hair down. And I just didn't want to be on my own. I certainly didn't want to be on my own at a lake. And the thought of going fishing, you know, I had nothing, no kit, no rods, reels, nothing. Fortunately, I have a few friends around me, and through the course of August, as the summer holidays rolled on, I guess I was in touch with Mark, Toll and Cockle at the lake, and a very generous couple of friends lent me bits of kit, and I got some stuff together, and I went back to Wraysbury. And I was only going at half tilt. I really didn't have much passion for it, but I got a bucket full of peanuts from Sparks Garden Centre in Winchester, and I cooked them up in my little flat at Winchester. And I went up to the lake, and I couldn't find any fish. I spent all day looking for the fish, and I didn't find any fish. I was paddling about, no electric outboard at that point, so it was all done with paddles. And I couldn't find any fish to go for. But I baited up a series of spots around the lake that looked good. Carp Bay, the swimming pool, Bryant's Bay. And then I ended up just sleeping in the undergrowth. At first light the next morning I was back. The sun came up, it was a lovely August day. And there literally wasn't a cloud in the sky. And I thought, well, I've got to have a chance of finding the fish today. But you know, when your heart's not really in it, you're just not quite there. And I paddled around, and I paddled round my spots in No Carp Bay. There were little piles of peanuts here, little piles of peanuts there. And I thought, this isn't happening, it's not happening. Went round the end of Bryant's Point, and a pile of peanuts just round the corner in a similar spot to where Dave Lane had hooked Mary previously. And went round the corner there, and I looked over in my little bucket at the bottom, at a spot I'd baited a few times previously. No peanuts. Not even a few peanuts. No peanuts. And I remember the moment sitting back on my knees and thinking, I'm sure I put some peanuts here. And there's that doubt crept in and thought, well, you were a bit of a mess yesterday, maybe you didn't put any peanuts there. And I'm thinking, I definitely put a pile of peanuts on this spot last night. And I remember looking over my shoulder, and as I looked over my left shoulder, I could just see a carp's dorsal fin just stretch out in the sunlight and glint. It was like, I found them, and they've cleared up my peanuts.